Hi, this is Paula Gloria with New Realities Global Public Access. New Realities Global Public Access is all about going beyond just watching reality, but creating new realities. And in particular, we want to do it in all parts of the world, thanks to internet technology. We want to share some of the most important breakthroughs in understanding how to create a better reality, certainly, and all the way to new realities. Today we have a guest, David Shields, who works with the Brandywine Nature Conservancy. This is one of the biggest land trusts in the United States, and the purpose of this of land trusts is to preserve land. And so this brings up the whole concept of the importance of the environment to the quality of human life. And if the quality of human life improves, then certainly we're going to get more satisfaction from our life, and we'll be able to act in such a way among our fellow human beings that we're more harmonious and certainly less violent. So thank you, David, for joining us on this show.
I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about your background, how you think you wound up into this position.
Well, I've always loved the land. I've been an outdoorsman all my life, from childhood, really. I spent a lot of time fishing and hunting and being outside. I grew up in the semi-country.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up outside of Wilmington, Delaware.
Oh, so...
I'm a local boy.
A local boy, yeah.
And as I told you earlier, most kids wanted to be a fireman or something, and I wanted to be a forest ranger. So
immediately.
Well,
what did that mean as a little boy, to be a forest ranger? What do you think?
I don't know, being out in the woods and working with Smokey the bear. I had no idea.
I see, yeah. So you liked, that Smokey was protecting the trees from being burnt down?
I have no, it just was, it was a pipe dream. It was a stereotypical images of the forest.
Yeah, but I can see, that tendency to protect, because I know, as not being a local girl, it's spectacularly beautiful land here. And when one sees how strip malls and so on can go up all over, anywhere in the world could be the same after they're finished. And the uniqueness of what the original land was like gets lost.
Well, that's what we're experiencing today. When I was growing up, the land didn't change much. Back in the 60s, where I grew up, it seemed the same in the short time of my young childhood. So later on, when you went to college, you studied economics? I was interested in the natural resources. I originally studied science. I was a biology major, but biology focused in a narrower interest, and I wanted to learn more and more. I had a more broader focus. So at the University of Vermont, I was struggling for a major that would fit what I wanted to do, and I found their natural resource economics program, which is a combination of economics plus the science that I enjoyed. So and that fit perfectly for me.
And then what was internship? What did that mean?
Well, that internship was at an outside institution beyond the college, and in that case it was essentially a summer job for almost no pay.
Oh, really?
Yes. It's like slavery.
Oh, really?
No,
but how did you get that job,
or
that non-job?
The Brandywine Conservancy. It's not the Brandywine Nature Conservancy. It's the Brandywine Conservancy. It's a local conservation organization just up the road from where I grew up, along the Brandywine River, and I grew up right along the Brandywine River. So, and I knew people there at the institution, and I applied and asked them if they would have an internship while I was in college.
What year was that?
Well, you have to understand, I was on the 9-year plan of college, so it was what year was that? 1980.
You dropped out and had a rock and roll group?
Well, not quite, but I had fun.
So the internship again was what year?
1980.
1980.
25 years ago.
And the people who wanted you to be with them, what were their objectives? What were they hoping that you could accomplish?
Well, they were, the Brandywine Conservancy had been, and it still is, but at the time was a leader in conservation of land using the conservation easement as a tool. And they wanted me
a tool
for protecting land, permanently restricting land. And if you want, I'll explain an easement.
Right, yes.
A conservation easement is essentially a deed restriction on land In this case, the landowner makes a grant of the conservation easement, in this case of the Brandywine Conservancy. The landowner continues to own the land. They've just agreed to a set of restrictions that would typically strip the land of any unused development rights that might be permitted by zoning. It also is going to contain provisions dealing with environmental issues, such as can they cut the timber, can they mine or excavate the land, can they alter the streams or pollution, and all these issues are going to be restricted. But it's an easement because it grants the Brandywine Conservancy the right to enforce those restrictions against the landowner and all future owners of the property. So my job was to visit those properties, to monitor how were the landowners doing, were they living up to their promise.
So the easements were done in 1980?
The easements were done from first easement Brandywine accepted was in 1969. And they were writing and holding and accepting easements throughout that time.
In 1969, who came up with that brilliant idea?
Well, actually, it resulted, if I'm not mistaken, well, the government had been using scenic easement concept for a long time. The easements go back to the 30s.
Was that the next best thing to the government, having cash to buy the land, to set it aside
well, it
for
meant
the
that
public use?
they didn't have to own the land. They would just, for
they
example,
didn't have to own the land, so they just restricted development.
They were restricted, and the most notable example was the Blue Ridge Highway. Mm-hmm. It was a newly built highway. They went through a beautiful set of mountains, and they didn't want billboards all along the road. So they essentially bought scenic easements from the landowners saying, you can't put up billboards here. They're going to leave the land open and natural. Later, the easements
What year was that, about, roughly?
I'm going to speculate that it was in the 1930s. I don't know exactly. Similarly, I believe in the 30s, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service was buying easements on the prairie pothole country, if you're familiar with those, or little ponds out in the middle of the Great Plains, North, South Dakota, and that area, and south. There were remnant puddles, if you will, left over from the glaciers.
Wow.
That puddles, the scale of multiple acres, that were critical wildlife migratory bird habitat.
Really?
Where the birds migrating to Canada and back up and down the Mississippi Flyway, they were stopping there and feeding along the way. But the farmers in the region were filling these potholes and to farm it. So the government was saying, well, we'll buy an easement saying, don't destroy this unique pond. We want it to stay just the way it is, and we'll pay for that privilege to you to not develop, not fill it. So they had these these wildlife easements. There was another time when conservation easements were used to protect the Natchez Trace Trail, which was an old-time Indian trail. I do not know the full history of both the trail or the type of easements they acquired, other than the purpose of the easement was to protect the trail that existed from being turned into a highway or being developed. So very early on, the U.S. government was using them. In the 60s, a landowner made a gift of a conservation easement to an organization and claimed a tax deduction for that gift. He felt, I'm giving away most of my development rights, I should be entitled to a tax deduction. Well, under the tax law at the time, you were not entitled to a charitable gift tax deduction for giving only part of your interest in property. For example, you couldn't give a painting to the local art museum, but reserve the right to bring it home for Christmas. You had to give all that you owned in that property in order to be eligible for an income tax deduction.
Oh, I see. And so they changed that, so you could
So
take it home for
conservation easement
Christmas.
is giving part of your rights to the land.
Right.
So that's unique in the tax law. And in this case, the fellow who claimed the conservation easement as a charitable gift, he won in tax court. That was back in the mid-60s. And later, Congress actually authorized conservation easements as a qualified charitable gift. And the laws evolved substantially since then. But
now, when these easements are in place, I think originally the big purchase that you made was from the King Ranch for about $11 million.
Well, that was 20 years into our operations. I mean, Brandywine Conservancy was formed in 1967, and the King Ranch project took place, and we created or conceived of the project in about 82, 83, and created a partnership to protect the land in '84, and was successful in acquiring the property in '85, and so
Right.
20 years later.
Now, the property's gone up in value even with easements.
Absolutely.
So who's buying this kind of property?
Well, we created a unique marketplace. This was a 5,400 acre property, one single large contiguous tract of land, surrounded by beautiful farmland, rolling countryside, springs, fields.
Perfect for
and woodlands.
fox hunts, right?
Well, fox hunting is a strong equestrian tradition out there, but a strong farming community as well, and absolutely phenomenal farmland.
They're real farmers there?
They're real farmers, yeah.
Do they?
The King Ranch was a cattle company. They were farming the land, and they were using
They were
it
farming
for
it as well
for
as
pasture.
cattle?
No, well, primarily pasture. There was not.
Oh, that's called farming. You farm.
Yeah, I should think so.
Oh, I
It's
thought.
husbandry.
Right. I think of putting seeds in the soil and having it grow.
Well, there's all kinds of
Is there?
farming.
Yeah.
Bees are farming.
Yeah.
Growing bees. But the point is that this was a very large contiguous block of land, and we were able to acquire it, restrict it with a conservation easement, and then sell parcels of land from it, keeping the key, most important core of the property, which we call the Laurels Preserve. That obviously was a great success, and we immediately started talking to all the landowners around it, and over time was able to convince them to also protect their land. So we have, over 20 some years of time since then, been able to assemble an area of protected land that's over 25,000 acres of contiguous protected land through private conservation easements and a few government purchased easements, agricultural easements. So this protection, suddenly the people in the middle of that enclave of land, well, they're guaranteed what's going to happen around them. They're not going to have Walmart. They're not going to have a Toll Brothers development. There's great value in having assurance that your view will be protected.
And
So
you've been watching this whole process for about 20 years. What have you noticed with the people who've participated in it?
we've created the sexiest marketplace in Chester County. Everybody wants to live out there, and the land values have skyrocketed.
But when people come in and they buy a house on a piece of property like that, how much acreage does that kind of?
Well, it's a depend.
tract
The
have?
King Ranch conservation easement was it limits development to one house per 30 acres, 33 acres.
Right. So your typical buyer is coming in from a .com
Well, no,
windfall, or
the land is not changing hand very often.
It doesn't change hands.
No. Once people acquire a piece, they're going to hang on to it. They might pass it to their kids. So that's another reason probably why prices are high.
But if they pass it to their children, if they have more than one child and there's only one house, what happens then? They just have to duke it out?
I don't know. That's up to them.
So it's never divided?
Not after it reaches the 30-acre limit.
Okay. Okay. But so there haven't been any sales? The sale
There's
of a
been
house?
plenty of sales, but of properties, but it's not very often. But you also have to remember that, for example, the surrounding properties that weren't part of that original transaction, those were individual easements on individual properties, as opposed to one easement on 5,000 acres. So, and every easement is customized to the property. So the terms might be slightly different on one piece of land versus another piece of land.
So it hasn't changed the community much. It's done the opposite. It's kept integrity in the community,
It's kept
or the original.
strong integrity in the community. As a matter of fact, I think it's drawn people together. There's formal and informal organizations out there of the residents that where they get together. It's created a very strong social community. It's come to the point where now the granting, the restriction of your land is actually, as one person said, it's socially de rigueur.
I know, that's what you said. It was socially proper.
Proper, exactly.
Yeah, yeah. We were talking before about your economics background when you were in college. So you must know the concept of a progressive tax. The idea of a progressive tax was set in place, if I'm not mistaken, it's around the early 1900s, when it was seen that certain...
The income tax was created by Congress in 1919.
That was supposed to be temporary, right?
Yeah.
It was just a temporary thing as long as the war lasted.
thought.
But in any case, there were a couple other things going on that that pointed to wealth starting to accumulate into the hands of fewer and fewer people. And the idea of a death tax was that this was a way of sort of distributing it back out again to the, to the public, or at least giving others a crack at it. Do you think that it could be viewed that this whole process of land trusts is keeping the rich richer and those that don't have land even less capable of ever acquiring that?
Well, no, actually, I think it's just
privilege?
the opposite, because the King Ranch project in the area here in Chester County is probably unique across the country. Land trusts throughout the United States, and there are a lot of them, are most notably working with farmers and ranchers out in the Midwest and the far West. The people that are giving or even selling easements are mostly working landowners, and they're doing it because they really love their property. Now, the fact that they're lowering the value of probably their greatest asset, to me, is an amazing thing for their generosity and their love for the land. Now, there probably are sidebar benefits that they're lowering that asset, so therefore they're reducing how large their estate is, their taxable estate at death. Many families are using the easements to implement a plan for passing the land down to their children in a way that they don't want to see the kids fight over what's going to happen with the property after the parents die. And many families leave the property to their children without any instructions, without any restrictions, and then you see kids fight over, one wants to live there and one doesn't care, and one's living in California, and they fight, and eventually the land gets sold. And
when there's no easements.
When there was no easements.
So you kind of help with the family
So
harmony.
the easement can be a plan.
And so that's where the idea of stewardship comes from, that these people
Well,
are...
the stewardship, I think most of the landowners, particularly the landowners who are granting the easements in the first place, they already have a level of land. So typically they're a pretty good steward already. They know how to work the land properly and take care of it. So now that conservation easement is going to require that there be certain minimum management standards for the land.
Well, just one aside, that camera's blinking? A little technical aside here. You know about... Anyway. I'm wondering, in your experience over 20 years, when people actually make that decision to put an easement on their property, what does... It's a gift, isn't it?
Typically.
Because it's like they're...
The governments are now buying conservation easements. As a matter of fact, many communities...
What does that mean, the government buys
the
easement? The government's asking you to do this, so the public is...
We started off where landowners were making a charitable gift of this easement. They were giving away their development rights, and they were further...
Just for love of the land?
Typically for love of the land, perhaps some estate planning purposes.
In other words, they have so much, they feel they don't want kids arguing over it?
Or? Well, they see it as a great way to implement a plan for their property that their kids can't change. As I said, when the government was acquiring easements way back in the 30s, they were probably writing checks to purchase that easement.
Right.
And easements had been purchased as opposed to being given away. And more easements are being purchased by state, federal, county, and even local.
But now, if the federal government comes in and buys easements, then that implies that any U.S. citizen is entitled to the enjoyment of that, isn't it? Or is it because of the downstream water? Is it the downstream water?
Well, it depends on the purpose of the program. Here in Chester County, we have a farmland preservation program. The county and the citizens of the county have said, we want to protect farmland, and they agree to be taxed to raise money to protect that farmland. The farmers aren't going to sell an easement to keep their land in farming if it's going to be open to public access. There are all kinds of liability issues as well as invasion of privacy. The county has agreed, okay, we'll buy an easement on your property. We value the open space even if we can't walk on it.
Isn't that kind of strange, though? Doesn't it seem like...
There are intrinsic values.
Because this is all the taxpayers' money. This is people in Harlem, and who don't have beautiful
Well, no,
things
the
to
people
look
in
at.
Harlem, they take care of New York's land, and people in Chester County are taking care of Chester County's
I
land.
thought it was federal. That's
Well,
why I said
there might be federal
if it was
contributions.
if the federal government comes in and buys an easement, that's what I meant.
But, well, different governments will have different programs, and what I described for you with the county's farmland preservation program does not provide for public access. Other, even municipalities buy easements. Some may require public access. There may be some federal programs where the purpose of the funding is to buy public access easements. Other easements may be to purchase wildlife habitat. Some may be for farmland preservation. So easements are often tailored to a particular purpose, and sometimes that purpose is specifically public access. So, and in some cases,
You know,
some people may not think it's appropriate.
well, yeah, and then you've got different cultures too and different attitudes. You know, the American Indians didn't think you could own land at all.
That's right.
In Greece, they feel that every Greek citizen is entitled to access to the seashore. So if you build a house next to the seashore, you can't ensure that nobody will be walking in front of you. This is something that we feel we're entitled to restrict it so that no one can walk in front of you.
I think there's been some court cases that say otherwise, but
Yeah? Oh, so you can
California
do that here?
and Delaware.
Yeah.
that's some of the
Yeah,
cases.
yeah. What do you think, though, as human beings, is our connection to the land?
Oh, I think it.
I mean, it would be nice to be abstract that
Isn't
we
that
could
where
live
we
in.
originally came from, the land?
Yeah,
We were running across the savannah.
Yeah.
We were born on the land. We weren't born in houses.
right.
So I think it's primeval. It's our evolution began in the land.
Can technology be used so that we can keep the land more beautiful?
Oh, I suppose we could put us all in houses or ship us to the different planets.
not-
but,
Or ship us to the different planets?
So I mean, yeah, sure. I mean, technology. I actually worry that technology is separating people further and further from the land, and keeping them in their homes or in their businesses or in their cars, and fewer people have an appreciation and an understanding for the natural resources, the natural land.
Now, something really practical could be how you treat sewage. You know, if a less technical approach would require more land-intensive approach, right? So that it can aerate.
Well, that's actually something we've discussed is by protecting a lot of land in Chester County, we may be providing for sewage treatment sites. One thing we've always been concerned about is water quality at the Brandywine Conservancy, particularly the water of the Brandywine River and the region. And Brandywine is, as like many rivers throughout the country, is frequently the dumping ground for municipal sewage. And there are a number of sewage plants along the Brandywine River itself and its major tributaries. Well, sewage treatment plants they treat the sewage, but then they're discharging into the river. Oftentimes, it's poorly managed treatment plant. It's not treating it completely. You get heavy metals. You get nutrients into the water, which is hurting the ecology of the stream itself. One person characterized the local sewage treatment plant in the town of Downingtown as it's like every citizen that's served by that plant walking annually to the river and dumping a bag of 10-10-10 fertilizer into the river. That's their equivalent of the sewage, the fertilizer, the nutrients they're putting into the river. Our goal was why are we putting it on the river? Why don't we spread it back on the land? In that case, we're putting water back into the ground, which is the primary source of most of our streams in this county, in this region. And if you can do it right, you might be able to spray the wastewater onto some kind of commodity plant that is taking up the nutrients that are contained in the water itself, and you can balance that with what can the plants take up with what you're putting on the land.
Do you study things like that? I mean,
I'm
in the
not an
Conservancy?
engineer. I study
No, the
conceptually.
Conservancy.
We are not engineers,
No.
but we've got a lot of common sense, and we will bring in consultants who do understand this.
Right.
But when we hear a good idea or something that makes a lot of sense, we're going to explore it.
And when people have good ideas, they come to you because you have the land to execute those ideas?
Well, we don't own a lot of land. I mean, we've protected over 30,000 acres in the county and in the region. through conservation easements. We own another 2,500.
But protection just means what you can't do. How about offering some things you can do that
well,
might
but
be
we
helpful?
can't. But by I guess where I was going with this was we can't now go to that landowner who's placed an easement on their property and given us the enforcement authority to make certain they live up to their easement. We can't come to them and say, okay, now we want to put sewage on your property.
Right,
That
right,
we don't
right.
have that privilege.
Yeah.
But we can certainly work with local communities, and we do, saying there's a better way to treat sewage.
Because you said that the water running off of the vast tracts of land were merging with the industrial water and diluting it?
Well, that was one of our major project areas, was a significant watershed that that the volume of the stream as it entered another part of a river, or the west branch of the Brandywine, had the effect of diluting the pollutants,
Which made it
which rendered
easier
it
to purify.
easier to purify, easier
Right.
to treat downstream.
Right, even if they had technical
So
solutions.
one dirty
huh?
stream, and then we put clean water into it, and something you can clean it a little better.
Well, we're going to be winding up now. What would you think is the last thoughts you would like people to have? What do you think is the most important
I think we're
thing
getting
to,
awfully
to know?
removed from the land in this country, and I worry that people don't understand what it's like to own land and how important it is to keep it open. We are building, it seems, on every inch of land in this country, at least certainly in our regions, and that I just wish the people and those that have to develop the land would be a little more considerate of the bigger picture, understand what they're doing, and the people should probably learn more. We need to get back in touch with the land.
So education should be important.
Well, I hope they're interested too.
Yeah, and nature walks and things, to be reminded.
If that'll help.
Good. Well, thank you so much for your efforts in protecting the environment and allowing people to have a place to know their humanity more and unfold higher potentials. So this is Paula Gloria with New Realities Global Public Access. We've just been hearing from David Shields with the Brandywine Conservency. It's a land trust that is dedicated to preserving the beauty of nature and also the utility of the beauty of nature, so that we can have a better environment in which to have better lives. Thank you for joining me, Paula Gloria, at Global Public Access.